Live, worldwide, Sports Byline USA. And here's host, Ron Barr.
And wherever you might be across this great country of ours and around the world, I'm Ron Barr. Good to have you with us for another edition of Sports Byline. And we got a great hour for you. I'll tell you what's coming up in just a second. But let me tell you about our fan poll question, because it's getting a lot of play. And I knew it would, because it's a very interesting subject. You know about the Lakers-Pelicans trade over the weekend. And so we thought we'd ask you fans out there, as you analyze it and take a look at it, who do you think got the better end of that trade, the Lakers or the Pelicans? And in the early voting, the fans are saying the Lakers 60%, the Pelicans 40%. I'm a little bit surprised at that, because if you take a look at just the bulk of players that the Pelicans are going to be getting from the Lakers, I'm not trying to take anything away from Anthony Davis, great player, and certainly he'll be a great addition to the Lakers, but they need other players around, you know, the really core of the Lakers in order to be as successful as I think that they want to be. And remember this, Anthony Davis could be just a one-year loan, because he's a free agent after this coming season coming up. So, again, think about it and go to the website at sportsbyline.com and vote in the fan poll question. And we check it each day to see how you fans feel about what's happening, and in this case, who do you think got the better end of the deal, the Lakers or the Pelicans? Later this week, I see we're going to be talking some football with former Heisman Trophy winner, MVP of the Super Bowl when he was playing with the Raiders. Jim Plunkett is going to be with us, and also we'll have a conversation with John Amici. Now, he played in the NBA, not for a real long time, but he was a very effective player. He played with the Utah Jazz, but he also, at that time, was gay. He's still gay, but nobody knew it. And he talks about what it was like to be a gay player in professional basketball. We're going to kick things off talking to Dean Miller. Now, if you're a pro wrestling and especially a WWE fan and an aficionado, then you'll want to check out a book called WWE Smackdown, co-authored by Dean Miller and Jake Black. The book relives the greatest moments, biggest superstar debuts, and key matches of the WWE Smackdown. It covers 20 years of the most unforgettable moments, both in the ring and behind the scenes. And then right after that, Casey Jacobsen will join us, a former guard forward who was drafted in the first round by the Suns, but he really had his greatest success when he was playing in Europe, and particularly in Germany. We're ready to go. Good to have you with us on Sports Byline.
This is America's sports talk show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Dean Miller joins us on Sports Byline, and if you're a pro wrestling and WWE fan and aficionado, then you'll want to check out a book called WWE Smackdown. It's co-authored by Dean Miller and Jake Black, and the book relives the greatest moments, biggest superstar debuts, and key matches of WWE Smackdown, and it covers 20 years of the most unforgettable moments, both in the ring and behind the scenes, and also it celebrates all the most exciting matches, celebrity appearances, and controversies in Smackdown history. And one of the co-authors, Dean Miller, joins us on Sports Byline. What's the genesis of this book? What was the motivation for writing this, Dean?
Well, WWE's been around for over 50 years. But some of their television shows, of course, Raw has been a staple on Monday night for over 25 years. And in 1999, because there was still even more demand from the fans, or the WWE universe, as WWE likes to call them, for more content, they created this show, SmackDown, that would run on Friday nights. And it's just had such a rich history that as they approached this 20th anniversary, which just passed last month, it just made sense to chronicle as much of it as possible, and so that new fans could learn about the history, and longtime fans could thumb through it and say, "Oh, I remember when that happened. Oh, that was so great." And the color photos are amazing, and it's just it's a really nice walk down memory lane, or an opportunity for new fans to see the long-standing history of SmackDown.
What's the individual image of SmackDown as compared to the other promotions that WWE has had?
Well, I think SmackDown is often known for giving more up-and-coming superstars their first opportunity. It's also got some real high-flying action a lot of times. But like in 2002, Batista, John Cena, and Randy Orton all debuted on SmackDown. Now they often went on to eventually move over to Raw and become even bigger stars, or in the case of John Cena and Batista, move on to Hollywood, become big stars. Of course, Batista's in the Marvel movie as Drax the Destroyer. But I think that's one of the hallmarks of SmackDown is that young superstars get kind of their first big break on national television, and it's a chance for people to really have some high-flying action matches as well.
You know, when you take a look at SmackDown and WWE, I am just amazed. I remember as a kid, I used to watch professional wrestling, and like most people, you go by it, and there was something that just grabbed you about professional wrestling. And, of course, McMahon and others have taken it to another level. How did it get as big as it is?
That's a great question. Obviously, it's been around for over 100 years, but it used to be very territorial, where people would, someone would just work in Texas or in the Northeast. And of course, it wasn't the international thing it is today. There was, of course, wrestling in Japan and wrestling in Mexico and wrestling in Europe, but there wasn't one kind of unifying brand. And what Vince McMahon did was he went out and said, I'm going to turn this into, I'm going to turn this small, because he had this territory that was basically Maine to Maryland, is what WWWF back at the time was called. But he didn't see why he couldn't make his a global brand, so he went and cut deals with the biggest stars from all around the United States, and then, of course, was the first person to really do closed-circuit events like WrestleMania, and it just has become a bigger and bigger and bigger event. I would say WrestleMania weekends are akin to Super Bowls and World Series, getting people from all over the world converging on a city to just enjoy not just the Sunday night event, but all the ancillary events as well.
And when you take a look at some of the unforgettable moments over 20 years, what are your favorites?
Well, one of the things that's really impressive, I thought, was, of course, SmackDown used to tape on Tuesday nights, and then it would air on Thursdays. And so Tuesday, 9/11/2001 was, of course, when tragedy struck and everyone canceled everything. But WWE held SmackDown in that same time. I believe it was Houston 2 days later, and it was the first kind of mass public event post 9/11. And it was really impressive and a little bit of a, you got chills just seeing, them providing some much-needed entertainment for a country that had, suffered and was still suffering and didn't know where we were going after those horrible attacks. So for them to be there 2 days later, I thought that was a pretty cool moment, and I think it's one of SmackDown's most signature moments.
When you think of the storylines that always go along with professional wrestling, how hard is it to create storylines for all the participants and also for the event itself?
It's a real challenge because I think you've got so many variables in that. First of all, I think you really have to listen to what the fans want, and so you might have planned something, or you want to get behind one guy, and the fans they voice their opinion, and they get behind it. Most recently, Kofi Kingston, he was with WWE for 11 years and never had a world title match. And he got into a match at Elimination Chamber, which was not one-on-one, but it was 6 guys competing. And the fans just really got behind him, and he put together such an amazing match that you could tell that Mr. McMahon and the McMahons didn't necessarily want to make him part of the main event of WrestleMania, but the fans would not be denied. And so, there was probably some other plan or story going into WrestleMania 35, but it had to be changed on the fly. And, of course, it's not just fan demand. People get hurt. And so all of a sudden, we're going to do this. There's a plan that, here's what the champion's going to do over the next 6 months. Like the Hardy Boys were the SmackDown Tag Team Champions until about 2 weeks ago when one of them got hurt and they had to forfeit the titles last week. So there's a lot of scrambling on the fly, and I get the sense that sometimes plans change often the morning of an event, and so it's hard, to necessarily, you can't map things out because there's a realness to it that I think sometimes people don't associate with professional wrestling, but it's there.
Another thing about WWE Smackdown has been the celebrity appearances, and I've seen some of them, and I kind of have to laugh and chuckle. How hard is it to implement them into the whole production?
Well, it goes. I think it varies from person to person, and some are really into it, and they kind of get what's trying to going on. And so I believe Arnold Schwarzenegger was on a very early episode of SmackDown, even before he was the governor of California. And it was very entertaining, and I think he made a couple more appearances and eventually was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But I think, a lot of people, come from music or movies, not just to promote their movie, but to get in touch with a whole new audience. And most of them were fans when they were kids, so it's kind of exciting for them to be in that part of the world, even though maybe they're more famous in some other world, be it like singing or acting.
Was Donald Trump at one of the SmackDowns? I remember he was on the wrestling presentation, but I don't know if there was a SmackDown or not.
He spent more time with Raw, and
okay.
When he had his battle with the billionaires with Vince McMahon, and which led to poor Vince getting his head shaved, although it grew back eventually, and he was actually inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in about 5 years ago.
We've got about 2 minutes left. The fans see what happens in the ring. What don't they see? What about behind the scenes?
Well, I worked at WWE for 7 years, and the behind-the-scenes thing that impresses me so much is the tireless work the superstars put into doing charity efforts for their fans. Like, John Cena has granted over 600 Make-A-Wish wishes, and he's doing that when he's, at the same time where he was wrestling a full-time schedule. And they work with the Special Olympics or reading programs, and of course there's a big military outreach within WWE to the point where they do a tribute to the troops show once a year around the holidays. So I think that's the tireless work that these men and women put in to support their fans and show thanks for, the way the fans support them. It's really inspirational.
We have a minute left. What do you think is going to be the long-time legacy of WWE Smackdown?
I think, first of all, I don't think it's going anywhere. In fact, it's been on the USA Network for the last couple of years, but Fox just acquired it in a 4-year deal that is paying WWE, I believe, $1 billion. So it's just going to continue to grow and get bigger, and I think there's going to be some real synergy with Fox. With the football broadcasts and their primetime network lineup, as well as WWE. So I just think it's going to continue to grow, and it's just part of the kind of pop culture landscape, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. There'll be ups and there'll be downs, but it'll still continue to eventually grow and grow.
Dean, congratulations to you and Jake on this book. It's fascinating. It's got some great pictures in there and the stories as well. You guys have done a great job in really capturing the whole feel and sense of WWE and SmackDown. Thank you for joining us here on Sports Byline. You're welcome. Come back and join us again.
Thank you, Ron. Anytime.
Again, Dean Miller with us. He is the co-author of this book, along with Jake Black, called WWE Smackdown, and the book relives the greatest moments, biggest superstar debuts, and key matches of WWE Smackdown. This is a very fascinating book about a very fascinating subject. We continue across the country and around the world with you on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Casey Jacobsen joins us on Sports Byline, a former guard forward who was drafted in the first round by the Phoenix Suns, and he also played briefly with New Orleans and Memphis. And he was a McDonald's All-American and All-American in his sophomore year at Stanford, but he found great success playing extensively in Europe and Germany, where he won 5 German League championships and twice was named the German League Finals MVP. And his Bros Baskets German team retired his number, and he's now doing a great job as a basketball broadcaster for Fox Sports and also the Pac-12 network. Casey, have you ever sat back and thought and wondered why you had more success in Europe than you had in the United States with the NBA?
I do not live my life like thinking about what if. It can be a dangerous rabbit hole to go down. I played 4 years in the NBA, and I tried my absolute best to stick in the NBA, it's just so hard. It was so hard for me to carve out a role off the bench, to be a shooter, to have to come into games not warm and be expected to make 24-footers. So I go to Europe, and there's not the elite level athletes in Europe. That's the easiest way I can say it. There are no LeBron James or Vince Carters or Shaquille O'Neal or Kobe Bryant that there were when I first came into the NBA. They just don't exist over there, because if they did, they'd be playing in the NBA. So because of that factor, and another factor is in Europe, it's very much about team. Even the best player in European leagues will only average about 17 or 18 points a game. It's very much we're all going to touch the ball. We're going to get multiple ball screens or multiple stagger screens, and everybody's going to get a chance to shoot and score. Whereas in the NBA, it's a lot more about getting your best player the ball and getting the heck out of the way.
You know, that's a very honest answer and a great explanation of it, because I agree with you. I think the European style is mostly teamwork, and I mean everybody playing, whereas isolation basketball is primarily played in the NBA. When you were in Stanford and having an All-American career, and you looked at the NBA, how did you see that league at that time, and did you anticipate the frustration that you might have playing at the NBA level?
That's an interesting question, because when I first came to Stanford in the 1999-2000 season was my freshman year, of course I wanted to be in the NBA, but I had never, my dad taught me the game, and I have two older brothers who played Division I college basketball, and my goal was to be better than my brothers. My goal was to be a college star. My ultimate goal wasn't, when I was growing up, to be at the NBA level. It wasn't until I got to college and I started to have some success that I thought, oh, maybe I can actually make it to the highest level. And so I did. I started watching a little bit more NBA basketball, because I grew up in Los Angeles, and I was born in 1981. So by the time I was 8, 9 years old, it's when Magic and Byron Scott and James Worthy were winning the Showtime Lakers. I never went to a Showtime Laker game my entire childhood. My dad just wasn't a Laker fan. He was more of a fan of college basketball, and so that's what we watched. But when I got to Stanford, I remember this, Ron, I went to a Warrior game, and I got some pretty good seats from another student who knew somebody, and I went and sat, maybe 3 or 4 rows from the court, and I was blown away. I was blown away by the speed and physical presence of every single player, including the smallest. Again, that time it was Donald Thornton was on the Warriors, Bob Sura. These guys were so fast, and the Warriors weren't a very good team, but it was hard for me to see myself playing with those guys. And I remember walking away from that game being like, you know what, I have a whole lot of work to do in the weight room and on the basketball court if I'm ever going to play at that level.
Also, I would assume that there's an expectation when you're drafted in the first round, no matter what that number is, and that goes along with expectation of coaches, expectation of the organization, and I would think that would be a hard thing to live up to somebody else's expectation. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same for basketball players as it is for any profession. If you're plucked, if you're supposed to be, a prodigy, or you're it doesn't matter how old you are, if you have the skill set and you belong there, then you're expected to do some things. I growing up, I didn't mind pressure. I didn't mind pressure as an individual. I didn't mind pressure from a good team. Like, for instance, going back to my Stanford days, we were ranked number 1 in the country my freshman and sophomore year. Not the entire year, but parts of it. And I loved that pressure because it drove me. It motivated me. I want to play on a team that is expected to win and that people talk about and that's relevant. And I want to be a kind of player that is expected to do well. I don't want to be the underdog. Now, is it kind of fun sometimes to be the underdog? Sure, Ron. It's fun sometimes. But as a general rule, I want people to expect me to do well, and that motivates me more than trying to beat somebody who is supposedly better.
Tell me a little bit about your brothers and your dad, because you said you learned your game from your dad, and yet you had brothers that were pretty good players as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my dad is named Von Jacobson, and he played Division I basketball at San Diego State University. And I think still to this day, he's in the top 15 all-time in scoring in San Diego State. So He had a phenomenal career. He was a 6'4" power forward, when 6'4" guys were actually power forwards back then. And then I'm one of 4 boys, and we're in ABCD order, Ron. So Adam and Brock are my 2 older brothers, and my name's Casey, and then my younger brother's Derek. So that's how you keep the Jacobson boys in line if you're scoring at home. And Adam and Brock both were very good basketball players. Adam went to the University of Pacific. He played with Michael Olowokandi. So who remember, Michael Olowokandi was the first pick overall in the late 90s. Yeah, so he was teammates with Michael Olowokandi. And then my second brother, Brock, played at University of San Diego for Brad Holland, who was the head coach there. And they were both really good, like all conference players. They weren't good enough to go to the pro ranks, but as a young man growing up, they set the bar really high, not only on the court, Ron, but also they were fantastic students. Pacific and San Diego are private schools in California that are top-notch. I mean, you got to have good grades to get into those institutions, and they did. So, there was no excuses for me growing up at all. My parents demanded that I get straight A's. They demanded that I put in the time, to develop my basketball skills. So I grew up in a house of overachievers. I grew up in a house of discipline and no excuses.
When you think about the not, spending an extended period of time in the NBA, especially when there was so much expectation of you, Casey, and the great success that you had in college, you probably had to deal with it. You had to get to that moment where you accepted the fact that maybe it's not going to work out at the NBA level, and so therefore you had to look for another avenue. Take me through that process.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I don't mind talking about this at all. I look back on my NBA career, and there is a little bit of I failed a little bit because I was a first-round pick, and I only played 4 years. But 4 years is about the average career in the NBA. But again, I think I said this in my first answer to one of your questions was, I don't look back and regret because I worked hard. And you can ask any coach that I played for, whether it be Mike D'Antoni or Mark Ivoroni. I worked hard. I was the first guy in and the last guy out. But it was difficult for me to find a niche where I could be consistent and perform. And yes, there was a moment, and it was after my 4th year, I tried to stick around with the Houston Rockets, and I went to training camp with them. It was when they had Jeff Van Gundy was the head coach, Yao Ming was their starting center, and Tracy McGrady was their all-star wing. And Shane Battier was also on that team, and Rafer Alston was the starting point guard of that group. And I went into training camp, and I did pretty well. And I thought, I went into training camp with no guaranteed money. I was, non-guaranteed player, so I honestly had to make the roster and prove to the coaches that I belonged if I was going to get any money at all. And I thought I did well. The last guy cut was me. So I go in for my last meeting, and I knew it was like a make or break. It came down to me and one other guy, Scott Padgett. And I thought I made the team, and I was hoping that Van Gundy was going to tell me, congratulations, you made it. And instead he said, we're going to let you go. We're going to keep one more power forward rather than one more guard on our roster. And it was the first time I'd ever been cut, Ron. It was tough. It was really, really difficult for me to take that walk out of that arena and know that I had to, pursue another opportunity. But I'd already played in Europe once before, so it wasn't like, I didn't know what it would be like to take myself overseas and kind of start anew. And now, I look back and, man, I loved my time in Germany. I genuinely did. Now, would I have liked to have a longer NBA career? Sure. But I don't look back at all. I have 3 daughters now, Ron, and 2 of my 3 daughters were born and raised in Germany. They spoke the language. They got to visit Paris and Austria. And so we spent some time and made some memories as a family that I don't think we would have ever made, had I been bouncing from team to team in the NBA.
We're talking with Casey Jacobsen, a former guard forward who was drafted in the first round by the Suns. Also played briefly with New Orleans and Memphis. Tried out, of course, as you heard him say, with Houston. But he had great success when he was over in Europe. And as I pointed out, he won 5 German League championships, and twice he was named German League Finals MVP. We'll talk about that aspect of his life and his career as we continue across the country and around the world. We've got you on Sports Byline.
This is America's sports talk show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Casey Jacobsen has joined us here on Sports Byline USA, and he was drafted in the first round by the Suns, played his college ball where he was an All-American in his sophomore year at Stanford, and after 4 years in the NBA, decided to take his talents overseas, primarily in Germany. And I'm wondering, the first time you went over there and you saw basketball at that level in that part of the world, what was the impression that you had?
Well, my first year in Europe ever was my 1 year in Spain, and I played on a fantastic team in Spain. I played with Luis Scola, Thiago Splitter, Pablo Prigioni, who all ended up going to the NBA at one point after I was teammates with them there. And the league was awesome. I mean, it didn't compare to the NBA athletic-wise, but there were so many talented players and coaches. And what I kind of noticed was there's a myth that European basketball is soft, that they don't play physical at all, and that was certainly not the case. It was not the case at all. There was a ton of grown men, like dudes who are 35 years old, full scraggly beards that are just throwing me around like rag dolls. So that was a myth. The athletic myth is true, but the actual physical part of European basketball is not true. So it's one of the things that I noticed right away. And the other thing is just like how even our best player, who happened to be Luis Scola, who was first team All-Euro League that year, he only averaged like 14 or 15 points a game, but he was our stud. It was just, we were loaded with talent, and we shared the basketball. And it took me a while, Ron, to figure out that, yeah, I might be this hot shot, former college All-American, former NBA guy, but I needed to fit. It wasn't like they were just going to give me the ball and say, hey, rescue us. No, it wasn't like that. They were already stacked, and they just needed me to help them get over the hump. So it took me a couple months to kind of figure out where I fit and to kind of readjust my expectations about, how many stats I'm going to put up. And once I did that, it was so much fun to play with that level of talent and that level of teamwork and camaraderie. It truly is a different locker room in NBA than it is in Europe. It's much more family-oriented in Europe. You eat pregame meals every game together. You stay with a road roommate. Like, you actually have a roommate that's a teammate in Europe. In the NBA, they just put you up in a hotel room on your own. It's like, all right, guys, be a shoot around at 10 a.m. the next day. It's just different. It's a different atmosphere. One's not, like, way better than the other, but they are starkly different.
Casey, I had a friend of mine that played professional basketball in France, and he said the shocker for him was that at halftime you go into the locker room and guys would light up cigarettes and drink wine.
So I absolutely have stories like that. There's no question that I had two teammates in the course of my career that would, one, like, lit a cigarette in the shower. I mean, who does that? And I looked at him and I was like, dude, you got to put that away because I'm not a smoker. And, like, this is a communal shower, man. That is not cool. And he put it out. But, like, that is like par for the course in Europe, man. It's a different speed.
I had another friend of mine who played in Greece, and I think you may know where I'm going with this, but he said that they were very passionate fans, and it'd be a full house sometime. And he said that if you didn't do something right or maybe you did something very, very good, they would throw coins out on the court. And he said sometimes we made more money off the money we picked up on the court than what we got in our paycheck.
So I have some first-hand experience as well. So in that same season I was just talking about, we made it to the EuroLeague Final Four, and it happened to be hosted by Panathinaikos, which is the team that Rick Pitino is now coaching, and really, really good program, historic program. And we were playing them in the Final Four on their home floor, and, of course, we're beating them with, 30 seconds to go. And in our team huddle, the coach was like, he's going over the stuff, and he's like, guys, if we win, do not celebrate on the floor because they will start throwing stuff, whatever they have, at you. So if we win this game, we immediately get out of the gym. And once you know it, we won the game, and just all hell broke loose. Stuff was flying from every which direction you could. And I busted my butt so fast out of there. I ran out of the tunnel harder than I ran in transition to get a shot the whole game.
What about the cultural input? Spain fans, German fans, Greek fans, and what have you. Did you notice any difference there?
Yeah, sure. So, the audience that's listening to us right now probably knows a little bit about European soccer. The fans in basketball are cut from the same cloth, I would say. So it's typical that they will bring these big, huge drums, and they will just pound away on these drums all game long. They'll bring trumpets. They'll bring horns. They'll bring anything that can make noise and irritate, and they'll play it all day. And they'll also sing songs pre-game, not so much during the game as they do in soccer, because there's more action in a basketball game a lot of times than there is in a European soccer match. So there's not as much time for them to sing. But they just have the fans feel so much more a part of the team and the city that they're from than any other NBA city or organization does. It's just like after every game in basketball in Europe, win or lose, Ron, you will go and shake all the hands of the fans that came, or at least those that'll come down to where the court is. And you make a laugh and you say thank you, or you hug them if it's a big win. They're very much a part of every single game, unlike, like the NBA is more of kind of a business, professional atmosphere than opposed to Europe.
Casey Jacobsen is with us. He's a former guard forward who was drafted in the first round and played in the NBA. Started out with the Suns, but he found great success playing extensively in Europe, and particularly with Germany, where he won 5 German League championships, twice was named the German League Finals MVP. One thing I've known, too, is that when Americans get with those overseas teams, and you touched on it a little bit earlier about, them thinking they're the savior of that team. And so there's expectations of the American player, and some of the American players that go over there saying, well, I'm playing in Europe. I'm a big fish in a small pond. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that experience for them. What is it that they're missing about stepping in and being a part of a team in Europe?
Well, I think the mistake, and I was asked, after I had some success in Europe, I was asked by other guys who were thinking about coming over to Europe, whether it be via the agent would get my number and say, hey, Casey's been over in Germany for a couple of years, he's had some success. Ask him what it's like, former NBA guys. And the first thing I would say is, dude, adjust your expectations on offense. You are not, if you're going over to a respected organization in any country, whether it be Germany, Spain, Italy, France, whatever, Greece, if you're going over to a respected organization, you are not going to average 20 points a game. It's just a fact of life. So get that out of your mind. And then I would also tell them, try to best integrate yourself with your team. Don't be a lone wolf. Don't be I'm an American, I'm over here to score points and then come back to the NBA. No. They will sniff that out, and they will boot you out. European programs want an American that's going to come over there, embrace their culture, embrace their fans, and buy into the team concept. And the earlier that they can do that, the more success they're going to have. It doesn't matter if they average 12 or 15 or 16 points a game. If they just put their head down, they work hard, they embrace the culture, the fans will love them. And they won't just love them for the year that they play. They'll love them forever. That's how passionate they are. So that was the one and only advice that I would always give former NBA guys if they were coming to Europe. Embrace the culture. Don't be about you. Be about the team, and you're going to have a good time.
You, of course, played a good portion of that time in Europe with the Bros basketball German team, and you were so good with them that they retired your number 23. And I know that must be very, very special to you. How good were those teams that you played on with them?
They were really good. And, I know people in America didn't watch our team play, but, we had several former NBA guys. In fact, my last year that we won a championship, P.J. Tucker, who's now a really nice role player for the Houston Rockets, he was our MVP of the finals my last year. So, and he wasn't just the only former NBA guy. Well, we had Brian Roberts, who played for 4 years with the Charlotte Hornets, was also my teammate in Germany for 5 seasons. So we had a lot of really good players, a lot of really good talent. And we ran off, we reeled off 4 consecutive German titles in a row, which hadn't been done, I think, since the 90s when a team in Berlin did it. So we kind of reeled off a nice little dynasty And it was a lot of fun to be a part of that kind of success. And my head coach, his name was Chris Fleming. He's now the assistant coach for the Brooklyn Nets. So, like, we all kind of took a lot from that experience and then moved on to bigger and better things.
I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, Casey, that if somebody went over to Europe, played there with an open mind, even if they were a star player in the United States, that if they came back to the NBA, if they had embraced that whole experience, both team-wise and culturally, that they were a different person. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, and two of the guys that I just mentioned, P.J. Tucker, he played in Europe for 3 seasons in a row before finally getting a call back from an NBA team. And I've talked to P.J. about this many times since then. He goes, dude, I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I had to go humble myself, to learn about another culture, and to kind of struggle a little bit. Being isolated from friends and family forces you to get out of your comfort zone, because I feel like I'm so much better equipped and more mentally tough to handle anything that I'll see in the NBA. Plus, he had a child in Germany in the one season I played over there too. So, like, having a family and just, it's a unique experience that you can't read about it in books. You got to go over and experience it. And PJ is a much better human being, and so am I, for that experience in Europe.
We've got about 3 minutes left, but you're now a basketball broadcaster for Fox Sports and the Pac-12 Network. When you take a look at today's college basketball player, what is it that you see that you didn't see when you were playing at Stanford?
Well, certainly they're more skilled in some aspects, although I wouldn't say that they're much better shooters. It's a topic that we could discuss. It'll take a lot longer than 3 minutes to say that, Ron. But they're better ball handlers now, but they're not as good catch-and-shoot players as I feel like were 10 and 15 years ago. And the reason why is because I think the Steph Curry effect, and I love Steph Curry, he's amazing. Everybody wants to dribble, and shoot from 25 feet like Steph. They don't want to be like Klay Thompson. I was like a Klay Thompson. That's who I wanted to be, and that's who I modeled my game after. There's not a lot of Klay Thompsons in the NBA. There's not a lot of Klay Thompsons in college or in high school. So that's one of the big differences I see now than in college as opposed to when I played. And then we're in a one-and-done era. Like when I played, I left early, 1 year early after my junior season at Stanford in 2002 to enter the NBA draft. And that was kind of normal. Like a lot of, All-Americans would leave after 3 years, like Jay Williams and Shane Battier for Duke stayed 3 and 4 years respectively, and they were awesome players. Now, if you're good at all, you leave after 1 year and maybe 2. I mean, it's very rare that a guy stays for 2 years. It has certainly not helped college basketball at all, this one-and-done era we're in. But I'm not going to blame the players. I totally understand. I was there once upon a time. You want to be a pro. Your window to become a pro is only open for so long. But I also, Ron, I don't like the narrative that staying in college hurts these kids. I think that's absolutely false, and it's stupid to say that. It doesn't hurt kids to stay longer in college. It only helps them, especially if they're playing for fantastic coaches like Tom Izzo, Mike Krzyzewski, or in my case, Mike Montgomery. Like Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal and Magic Johnson, 3 of the best, arguably top 10 players of all time. They all stayed at least 3 years in college, and it didn't hurt them. Now, could they have made more money? Yeah, but it didn't hurt them at all. In fact, I would argue that it helped them develop some toughness and some basketball skill along the way.
We've got about 50 seconds left, and when you think back on your career, and I'm just wondering, is there a moment, Casey, that when you think back is engraved in your mind forever, one that you won't forget?
Oh, man. I would say winning my first title as a professional in 2007 in Germany, and sharing that moment with my wife. She came out on the center court, and I don't know, like I'd won some Pac-12 championships, Pac-10 back then, Pac-10 championships with Stanford, but I never made a Final Four. I never won a national title in college. To win a title at the professional level, a really long season, it was like an 8 or 9 month season in Germany. To raise a trophy and be named MVP, to share that moment with my wife and my very young daughter was really special and one of those memories that I will hang on to for the rest of my life.
Well, Casey, I've enjoyed listening to your story, and, of course, I followed your career when you were playing down at Stanford. You were a hell of an outside shooter. I mean, you could bury those things. Thank you for sharing it with us and our worldwide audience. Come back. You're welcome anytime, Casey, here on Sports Byline.
My pleasure, Ron. Have a great day, man.
Casey Jacobsen, former guard forward. He was drafted in the first round by the Suns, also played briefly with New Orleans and Memphis, McDonald's All-American and an All-American in his sophomore year at Stanford. And, of course, he found great success playing extensively in Europe and in Germany, where he won 5 German League championships and twice was named German League Finals MVP. We continue with more of you at America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
And that's going to wrap up this hour of Sports Byline. Casey Jacobsen talking some basketball with us, the former guard forward who was drafted in the first round by the Suns, also played briefly with New Orleans and Memphis. And he found great success playing extensively in Europe and especially in Germany. And he's now a basketball broadcaster for Fox Sports and the Pac-12 Network. And if you like wrestling, be sure to check out a book called WWE Smackdown. One of the co-authors, Dean Miller, with us, along with Jake Black. And this book relives some of the greatest moments, biggest superstar debuts, and key matches of the WWE Smackdown. It covers 20 years of the most unforgettable moments, both in the ring and also behind the scenes. Hang around. We've got more coming your way on America's Sports Talk Show.
Hi, this is Jay Ritchie, the co-host of Tee to Green, the golf show, the show by golfers for golfers. Be sure to join us every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time when we talk golf live from the Broadmoor Resort in Colorado Springs, Colorado, right here on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network.
Live, worldwide, Sports Byline USA. And here's host, Ron Barr.
And good to have you with us for this hour of America's Sports Talk Show. I'm Ron Barr. I've got 2 friends with me this hour. This is going to be a very special hour, and I think you're going to enjoy it. I've known Dusty Baker for a long time. I knew him when I was a local television and radio host here in San Francisco, and now that I've got this national network and have had it for, well, ever since 1988. I knew Dusty Baker when he was the hitting coach for the San Francisco Giants. I knew him when he was the manager of the San Francisco Giants, known him as a manager with the Cubs, with the Cincinnati Reds, with the Washington Nationals, and we're going to spend some time with him. What I like about Dusty Baker is he's a realist. He also played the game very well, winning World Series championships, and he is a very deep thinker with a lot of interest. He really loves jazz. He loves fishing, and he has some other interests as well. And he is what they call a player's manager. And 21 years as a major league manager, 10 with the Giants, 4 with the Cubs, 6 with the Reds, and he is now managing the Washington Nationals. And he is a 3-time National League Manager of the Year with the San Francisco Giants after playing 19 seasons in the major leagues, 8 with Atlanta, 8 with the Dodgers, 1 with the Giants, and 2 with the Oakland A's. And he won a World Series championship with the Dodgers back in 1981. And he was the postseason, or in the postseason, 8 times and 3 times in the World Series, and was the NLCS MVP. And on April the 8th, 1974, he was a part of history. Baker was on deck when Hank Aaron hit home run number 715 to pass Babe Ruth. So we'll talk about his life and about his career and about his interest. And then after that, if you're a gearhead, if you're a NASCAR fan, I've got the guy for you. Jeff Gordon is going to spend time with us, 4-time NASCAR Sprint Cup champion who drove the number 24 Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports in 23 full-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series seasons. And he also stepped in as a substitute driver for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the number 88 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet in select races during the 2016 season. He also won the Daytona 500 3 times. He is 3rd on the all-time Cup wins list with 93 career wins, the most in NASCAR's modern era. And also he has a great book out that I want you to check out. It's called Jeff Gordon, His Dream, Drive, and Destiny. So when we come back, Jeff Gordon joins us and you on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Jeff Gordon joins us on Sports Byline, four-time NASCAR Sprint Cup champion, who drove the number 24 Chevrolet for the Hendrick Motorsports team and 23 full-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series seasons. He also stepped in as a substitute driver for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the number 88 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet in select races during the 2016 season. And he also won the Daytona 500 three times. He is third on the all-time Cup wins list with 93 career victories, the most in NASCAR's modern era. And he's been named as one of the 50 greatest drivers ever in NASCAR racing. And he has a great book out that I want to recommend to everybody. It's called Jeff Gordon, His Dream, Drive, and Destiny. You heard me say an awful lot about your career. Have you ever sat back, thought about it, and just been kind of blown away by what you were able to accomplish, Jeff?
Well, that's what I loved about this project is no, seriously, I have not. Throughout my career, I've just always so in the moment or looking ahead. I was never reflecting back as much as I wanted to. And I always said, well, when that day comes when I stop driving full time, I hope that I can go back and relive these moments. And this book that, I worked with Joe Garner, we had that opportunity to relive so many great moments. And just really everything that happened throughout my career that led to good things, or molded me or affected me or impacted each decision or each moment in my life and career. And so it's been fantastic, and I'm very proud of what we've come put together as well.
One of the things I've learned in talking to athletes over the years is that the parental influence has really been a molding experience as well. And in your book, you talk a lot about your mom and dad, particularly about your mom, Carol. Tell me a little bit about how they were like in the early years of your life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that to me is what I love the most. Actually, there's some stories in the book that even I didn't, know about how my mom and my stepdad met and what influenced them to make the choices in their life to, put me in a race car or they tried to start, a small business and the challenges that they were going through, and then their commitment to, myself and my sister and our lives and building this life together. And obviously that led to me racing and was, pretty much the major influence on what this journey has been like.
I suppose one of the early changes in your life, because you say my influence has changed a lot when I was in junior high, and you had a friend by the name of Chris who your mom was not particularly pleased with, didn't she?
She sure wasn't. I think we all go through that. And I think, again, you're right about parents, and what they have to do to motivate their children or to keep them out of harm's way or change their direction in life. And I've been racing for a number of years and really had almost accomplished all that I could, racing quarter midgets and go-karts. And we were looking for that next step or what the direction in, my life was going to be. Am I going to go do another sport or something? Because there just wasn't a race car that we saw as the next level or next step. And I found myself, hanging out with the wrong crowds, getting into trouble and having too much idle time. My parents are working really hard. And luckily for me, they recognized that and they said, you know what, we've got to keep Jeff engaged. Let's figure out how we get him in a race car, maybe sooner than what we were anticipating. And that ended up being a sprint car, which was kind of a crazy idea, when I was only 13 years old, but one of the best decisions that ever happened in my career.
I love the story that you tell in the book about when you were a young kid. You said, when my parents went to bed, I would sneak out of the bedroom window, and, of course, you'd hook up with Chris, and you guys drove down to San Francisco. Tell me about that garage that you went to with your skateboards.
It's still one of the craziest things I think I've ever done in my life, to be able to, and I don't condone this in any way, but, I was just a teenage kid that, was trying to make the most out of some opportunities in life and got invited to go kind of a late night outing. He was 15, didn't even have a driver's license, but his parents or his mom had bought him a car, and he knew where the keys were. When he turned 16, well, he'd get a hold of that thing, before he was 16. And we ended up taking, about a 45-minute drive from Vallejo, where I live, to San Francisco, and we loved skateboarding at that time, and hopped the fence, went into this parking garage, and there was about 4 or 5 of us that had these races on skateboards all the way down this 4 or 5 level garage. And I mean, it was a lot of fun, but boy, it was something that could have got me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, you said, but I remember coming home and the lights were on, the front door was cracked open, and I thought, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble. How close did you come to going to military school?
I mean, if you talk to my parents, they probably said, "Oh, we were bluffing and hoping we didn't have to call." He didn't call our bluff, but I thought it was going to happen. I mean, I got in a little bit of trouble a couple of times where I was out too late, getting in trouble and just doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and wasn't really doing what I should have been doing in school. And they really had to get my attention, and so that was it. They said, pack your bags, and we're taking you to military school. And I went in and started packing, and I actually got my bags packed and got to the front door, and then they had that conversation. Let's sit down and talk about this. And luckily, I didn't go to military school, but I definitely think it had an impact on I started recognizing, okay, I need to change some things in my life. And again, at that same time, luckily, that sprint car came along at the perfect time. And from that point on, I was always just laser focused on driving those race cars and my career.
Jeff Gordon is with us. And again, I want you to check out the book, Jeff Gordon, His Dream, Drive, and Destiny. We're going to make it a selection of the month on the Sports Byline Book Corner. With success comes, of course, adulation and a number of other things. You got the opportunity to host Saturday Night Live. And for somebody with your background and easygoing nature, you said, I was overwhelmed. That was one of the most frightening experiences of my life because I had no direction, no idea what to expect. What was it like to you when you had a chance to look back on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an actor, never pursued that. I was always pretty comfortable in front of a camera. But I just had no idea what all it entailed to do Saturday Night Live. I got invited to do it. And the first time I really just thought it was a joke. I was like, surely they don't really want me to do this. But then luckily I got a second chance at it and jumped at the opportunity when some friends of mine told me, no, you're doing it. And so, to show up there and meet with the writers and the staff, and then they say, okay, here's a stack of scripts, just go over them briefly, and then we'll meet you in this room where all the cast and crew get together. I had no idea I was walking in there to actually read these scripts, and mine was the first line, sitting next to Lorne Michaels, and the first one I had to howl like a wolf all my lines. And so you can imagine a race car driver who is not at all interested in Hollywood or the TV and film world, how that pretty much made my heart pound out of my chest.
One of the things that you also said that when I reflected back on it and read it and everything, I really was impressed by. You said it was a huge adrenaline rush, such a blast. But here's the line that caught me, Jeff. You realize you can't fail. And that was something that really was kind of a guidepost for you throughout your career, was it not? You can't fail?
Well, I like taking risk. I think it's important in life, and certainly in sports and in racing, you've got to take some risk. But you got to be as calculating with them as possible, know, kind of when you step over the line, how to pull yourself back. And I think, that was something that, it's been with me throughout my whole life, and certainly in my career. And opportunities like Saturday Night Live was one of those moments where I pushed myself, I took some chances and risks, and I realized, and certainly it helped me with, I think people saw how I was out of my element during that week that you're there rehearsing and going through everything. And I think they realized, oh man, he's pretty nervous, and this is not something he's comfortable with. But they've seen that before with hosts, and they really embrace it and they say, listen, there's nothing you can do that's if you do it wrong, it's actually funnier. So we want you to fail because then it's actually really fun and going to make a better show. So, I pretty much took that not only into the live show that we did, but I took that and carried that with me away from that show and in my career and in my life, and realized that, you got to take chances and risk. And if you fail, it only makes you stronger and better and actually makes you more real to the people around you.
Jeff Gordon has joined us, four-time NASCAR Sprint Cup champion who drove the number 24 Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports in 23 full-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series seasons. We'll talk about that aspect of his life as we continue across the country and around the world on the American Forces Network and the Internet and Sirius Satellite Radio. We've got you on America's Sports Talk Show.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Jeff Gordon has joined us here on Sports Byline USA. You know the story on him, but he has a wonderful book out. It's called Jeff Gordon, His Dream, His Drive, and also Destiny. Jeff, I've asked other athletes, particularly, say, pitchers, do you remember the day or the particular game when you realized that you could play at that particular level, the major league level, or play in the National Football League or the NBA? Where was that moment for you when you realized you could compete at this level and you could be successful at it?
Ooh. I mean, in racing, that you go through these stages where you're in, a car that's lower power and built more for younger, ages. And so at that level, I won a lot of races and built my confidence up, but I still didn't think that I had what it took to go to the next level. Then I got to the next level, started having success. So that it was sort of that same path for me each step of the way. I was always nervous and anxious and not sure if I had what it took. But I guess when I finally got up to the NASCAR Cup level and I started competing against, these names like Mark Martin and Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace, names I'd seen for a long time, and I started racing side by side with them. And then I guess when I won my very first race in 1994 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I realized right then, I can do this. I've got what it takes. And from that point on, I just had a tremendous amount of confidence in myself and my team, and I guess the rest is history from there.
I think you'll confirm this, but a friend of mine is Bobby Rahal, and he and I had a long talk because we both fly high-performance aircraft. And, of course, Bobby, with his glasses, I often wondered how he did it. And he said to me one time when I'm coming in for a landing, he said, my co-pilot goes, and I pull back. But I want to ask you this. He once said to me that when you're flying, he said if the aircraft is going 300 miles an hour, you have to be thinking 301 miles an hour. Does that apply also to what you did in auto racing?
Of course, absolutely. And I think that's what separates the good drivers from the great drivers. I think it's what separates the general public from a race car driver is once you get comfortable at 200 miles per hour and taking a car through a corner at 180 miles per hour and putting it out there on the edge, you realize you're in control, that you know where the limits are and how to get there but not go over it. And each lap you make, you build confidence in yourself, confidence in the car. You start to get comfortable enough to where you believe that there's nobody better that can make this car go any faster, and that it becomes a real team sport. And you definitely, as everything slows down in your mind, you start to do extraordinary things behind the wheel.
What was the most challenging thing that you had to deal with during the course of your career? Because you have to deal with the public, you have to deal with sponsors, you have to deal with racing, have to deal with crew chiefs. What was the hardest one for you to get your hand and mind around?
Jimmy Johnson. Everything was, going amazing throughout my career. Through 2001, won the championship. Of course, I had some personal, things that happened with my divorce. But at that same time, Jimmy Johnson came along. We became good friends. He became a teammate. I felt very confident that, we could give him great equipment and he could go on and be successful. But I felt confident enough in our 2014 that we would continue to dominate at Hendrick Motorsports as the lead team. But, he and Chad Canals and that 48 team, proved us wrong. I mean, we had great years, but I'll tell you what, those guys, and they proved it again this past Sunday by winning their 7th championship, but they really, to me, took it to another level, which is what the 24 car did when they came along in Hendrick Motorsports. So on one hand, I'm proud of it, but on the other hand, that was one of the biggest challenges was, handling the fact that, that they were better than us.
You mentioned about the personal challenges. You know how much focus is important in doing anything, and particularly at a high-speed sport like motor racing. And I'm just wondering how you dealt with the personal challenges that you had with the divorce and things that were going on. How were you able to eliminate those for the period of time when you were in the cockpit of the car?
Well, I think it first starts with having, a great family and support system of friends and people that you can, confide in and trust in. Rick Hendrick was a big part of that for me, and Linda Hendrick. They were like a second family and still are, to me. But, reconnecting with my parents, we kind of had a disconnect during the time I was married the first time. And reconnecting with them allowed me, to have some, personal successes through a failure. And then, on the racetrack, I don't know, that to me, that was one of those things that I always felt like I could flip that switch, start that engine, put the helmet on, put the belts on, and flip that switch. And there was nothing else on my mind other than driving that race car the best of my ability.
I think about the Godfather movie. You go and retire after the 2015 season, move into the broadcast booth, and then you're pulled back out to replace Dale Earnhardt Jr. when he had his concussions problem. And that great line from the movie is, just about the time I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
I've heard many people quote that to me, so now I know where it comes from. That's true. I mean, I did not see that coming or anticipate that, and, you certainly never want to see one of your teammates and friends and such an important personality in our sport have that kind of an issue. But Hendrick has been so good to me. Rick Hendrick, as I mentioned, like family. And when he called and said, "Hey, could you fill in?" I didn't even think twice about it. Of course, I thought that was for maybe 1 or 2 races. I didn't know it was going to be 7 or 8. But I was just having fun at the end at Martinsville, and then it came to an end. But I was happy to be able to support, contribute, and help in any way I could. And Alex Bowman has also done an excellent job. But we all are excited to get Dale Jr. back behind that wheel.
I've talked to a lot of people and players, too. What was it like up in Green Bay, or what was it like at Michigan when you ran into that stadium and everything? Tell me a little bit over the years of racing, what it was like on race day and the whole feeling and atmosphere. Or were you just so focused in that you really couldn't take in what was happening around you?
Yeah, there's certain days, certain moments. Honestly, the one that stands out to me most was my final race at Homestead. Well, my final race, but that day from start to finish was one of the most amazing experiences that I had ever had, where I was letting it sink in and taking, whether it be what I was seeing on social media, where I was interacting one-on-one with the fans, or seeing my mom and my stepdad, my wife Ingrid and kids. It just, Rick Hendrick, all of them, it was just unbelievable. And I don't think I ever allowed myself to go there throughout my career, because I was just always thinking about the race, the first laps, the starts, how are we going to either make the car better or what challenges were coming. And so when you saw me at the racetrack, I was smiling and waving and high-fiving and signing autographs, taking pictures, but in my mind, I was in another place. And the only time I ever let go of that was in that final race at Homestead, and it was amazing. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know this is a little bit unfair, but of all the races that you raced over your active career, is there one that kind of sticks out in your mind, Jeff?
Well, certainly the inaugural Brickyard 400. As a kid growing up in California, I was a big fan of the Indianapolis 500. My heroes were Rick Mears and A.J. Foyt and Rutherford and Unser. And so when I moved to Indiana racing sprint cars, of course, it's every sprint car driver's dream around, Indiana and Ohio and the Midwest to race at Indianapolis. So, when that didn't happen, when I went to NASCAR, I was disappointed. I was excited about NASCAR, but boy, I really got excited when I found out that NASCAR was going to Indianapolis to race for the first time. So to be able to experience what that was like and to win that race, That's just a memory to me that will last forever.
We got about 90 seconds left, but when you think back on your long career, what is it that you'd like people to remember about Jeff Gordon?
Well, and I think that's what I loved about this project in the book. I think, I peel back some layers and open up to let people realize that, your perception of what you maybe read or saw on TV, that there's a lot more to not just me, but to my story and how I got here and, what sacrifices my parents made and so many others along the way. And that it wasn't always just easy and handed to me. There's a lot of challenges and hard work. And, I think for me, the keys to success are being a great team player, being a great communicator, and working harder than anybody else out there. And it certainly paid off for me, and I think most people would say that that's key to success in their lives as well.
What would you like people to take away from this book, Jeff?
To me, it's a fun read. Everybody I've talked to, feels the same way that I do when I've gone through and edited the book and put it all, all the chapters together. I just think that Joe Garner did an amazing job reaching out and touching so many different people in my life. And I think they're going to realize, just like if they watch me do Saturday Night Live, they realize Jeff's not afraid to take some chances and risk and show people another side of him. And I think this book really, truly does that about who I am as a person and how I feel about racing and, what family and friends and this sport has meant to me over the years.
Jeff, I want to thank you for your kindness, your friendship, and, of course, we're heard overseas on the American Forces Network for your kindness to the soldiers as well. Take care, my friend. You're welcome back here anytime.
Well, thank you very much, Ron. Let's not make it this long the next time. Hope to be on soon, and God bless America.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Gordon with us. Again, check out the book, His Dream, Drive, and Destiny. We continue on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Dusty Baker joins us on Sports Byline, the former Major League Baseball player and, of course, manager of the Washington Nationals. 20 years as a Major League manager, 10 with the Giants, 4 with the Cubs, 6 with the Reds, and, of course, the manager of the Washington Nationals, 3-time National League Manager of the Year when he was with the San Francisco Giants. And, of course, he played 19 seasons in the majors with Atlanta, the Dodgers, the Giants, and Oakland. Won a world championship with the Dodgers in 1981. Dusty, I know your last year with Cincinnati was 2013, and I read a quote that I thought was very interesting from you when you took the job in Washington. You said, "This is not a break I wanted necessarily, but it probably was best for me," talking about leaving Cincinnati and then joining Washington. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I meant by that is it gave me a chance to really get my health in tip-top shape. Plus, I got to see my daughter get married in my backyard because there was a tree in my backyard, and when she was a lot younger, she said, "Dad, I want to get married by that tree." And we had a great ceremony. I went to Canada, about 500 kilometers north of Whistler, fishing with my buddy, and cell phones didn't work, and saw eagles come down and, grab fish up out of the water. And then I went to spend about 10 days with the Cheyenne Nation in Montana, fished all through Montana, and just did some things that I always really wanted to do, and including going to Hawaii 3 times in 1 year. And so, like I said, and then also, Ron, I started a couple companies, Baker Energy Team, and then I got Baker Family Wines. And so I was busy. I was paying attention to baseball, but then, it just gave me a truer perspective on really what life's all about.
Yeah, knowing you as well as I do, I was happy for you. I think anybody that's known you for a long period of time, Dusty, wanted you to have a little bit of a break so you could kind of get generated again, and then be able to have a different approach. Did you come back that way? Did you have new juices?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I didn't really know what it was like. I mean, if I had changed much or not, because, I used to take those games hard and take them, to the bedroom where I couldn't sleep sometime, or up early in the morning. And I remember Chris Spire, well, he didn't tell me, but I read it in the article, Chris Spire, one of my coaches, and he says, hey, man, these, I see a new regenerated Dusty. He doesn't really take these losses quite as hard, or at least I didn't show it. And, you really realize what it's all about. I mean, and you realize that these games are important. But, in the long run, who's going to remember, 4 or 5 years ago? And, sometimes it's all meaningless. In the overall scheme of things, you think about illness, you think about life and death. And like I had a stroke, I had cancer 9 years ago. And so you just, you really put everything in perspective about life.
I know during that break you did analysis for TBS in the playoffs and the pregame and postgame show. Did you see or come to understand something about the game from that perspective that maybe you had not seen before?
I guess the game's a lot easier up there. and the game is a lot slower up there. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, down the field, you only have, one guess. And you hope that you're right. And then you come to realize that it's not all in your control. A lot of things you think you're in control, it's in the control of really how the players perform. That's one of the things about being a manager, is that you're judged on the performance, of your players. And but I liked it up there a lot. I had a great time with Casey Stern and Pedro Martinez and Jerry Sheffield. We had a lot of fun up there, and that's what it's all about. You see a different side of life and different side of baseball from up there.
Do you still shake your head a little bit about getting that Washington job, because it looked like it was going to be in the hands of Bud Black, and then all of a sudden 2 days later it's Dusty Baker, the new manager of the Washington Nationals?
Well, something, I had just gone to Santa Cruz because I had written this book with a guy named Steve Kettman, Kiss the Sky, and I'd gone over there for like a book signing, and I had heard the word that, I didn't get the job, and I didn't really understand it, but I'm saying, okay, man, I'm up here in the hills of Santa Cruz, and I'll just stay up here and for a couple of days and mellow out. And then when I came back on that Sunday night, then I got a call Monday morning, and I got a call saying, hey, man, the deal's not completed. It really didn't happen yet. And I got a call from Ted Lerner, the president and owner of the club. And at that point in time, I said, well, maybe I'm supposed to have this, because I was resigned to the fact that, this was my last opportunity, which I really didn't really understand, because all of a sudden I couldn't get any callbacks. Nobody would return my call, so I quit calling. And like sometimes it's in the hands of the Lord. It's not in the hands of the people even hiring sometimes. And so I just thought, hey, man, this is an opportunity. And my son really helped me, because my son and my wife, they told me, they said, hey, man, this is what you want to do. It was a good club. I said I wasn't coming back unless it was a good ball club, gave me a chance to win. And my son, he's like, Dad, this is a chance of a lifetime. And I'm like, man, I'm supposed to be telling you that, you know what I mean? So, because, when you're home and you're used to being home, Ron, and you see, you go to your son's games, and I was going to his high school games, and he didn't put any pressure on me, but when I had a chance, he goes, Dad, I really miss going to the ballpark. And he had never told me that the whole time, that I was home. And so, I had a good time at home. I picked my grapes, I took care of them, I raised a garden, and so this showed me what the future is going to be like, and future is bright for me.
Dusty Baker with us here on Sports Byline. I consider him to be kind of a Renaissance man. He loves music, loves business, loves education, literature, sociology, and the arts. And I want to recommend to everybody his book called Kiss the Sky, My Weekend in Monterey at the greatest concert ever. And I love what you wrote in the book. You said that the gift that you received from your mother for your 18th birthday, one of the greatest presents a mother could ever give a son. Tell everybody what that gift was.
Well, the gift was, 2 tickets to the Monterey Jazz Festival, for me and my buddy, 1967, the use of the Rambler station wagon, and $20. And, we slept in the car because the station wagon, the seats let all the way down. We showered on the beach, and we got to see one of the greatest concerts of all time that we had no clue about what we were seeing. And the first time I had seen Jimi Hendrix, and I think T-Bone Walker was there, and the Mamas and Papas, and Jefferson Airplane, and Eric Burton and the Animals. I mean, there was a pile of people that you'll probably never see that kind of concert again. And that's what I meant. It just gave me a whole kind of new lease on life. And that was a time of Vietnam and race riots and civil rights, and that was a time where people really came together, at least for that, that one night, and it kind of started the movement, and also the peace and love, psychedelic era. And so I enjoyed it. My friend that I went with, Gary Woodrell, and then from then on, I was a Jimi Hendrix man, to tell you the truth, so I had a good time.
Yeah, I know you said in the book, you said that Hendrix's face between songs you wrote resembles a ball player who just hit a home run, the bat being Jimmy's guitar, at least before he lit it on fire and smashed it. You almost feel that the bat did the work. It feels so light in your hands. The swing feels so easy. Hendrix had the exhilarated look of being as amazed as all of us at what was happening with his guitar. What a great description, Dusty.
Well, I'm telling you, I was just lucky to be in that situation and fortunate enough, to be there. And, as a young kid, man, you don't know what you're, getting into. And, it was a different world. I wanted to be an athlete big time. I wanted to be a pro. I didn't do what most of the kids there were doing. I didn't even have my first beer until later because, I was just wanted to be an athlete. And that was it sort of enlightened my eyes to a lot of things in the world.
The other thing I've always respected and appreciated about you, especially in our conversations, is some of the things that we get in. When you talk, you make so much sense, and it is something that resonates with an awful lot of people. And you also talked about at the Commonwealth Club here in San Francisco about baseball going backwards to me in a lot of ways on the field and in management at the same time. Can you explain a little bit further?
Well, I number one, I say not to say my generation was the best, and the generation before me is even better than that. But sometimes you see bad baseball, and you really can't tell bad baseball when the game itself is kind of diluted. And I see it going backwards. I remember, we had a black general manager, Mr. Bill Lucas, when I was with the Braves, and that was back then. And we had a couple African-American managers. I remember we had Maury Wells in Seattle. We had Frank Robinson. I mean, and we're in the same boat now, and you see a whole lot less American-born, blacks on the field. And I talked to a lot of kids, and in the front office and in scouting, and it just seems like things have gone backwards, and there's really no appeal process. There's not anybody to complain to because nobody really wants to hear it. And just, we just celebrate Jackie Robinson Day and, Black American History Month in February. And then after that, it seems like, nothing's done, and we're still around talking about the same things that we were talking about 40 years ago. I mean, we should be well past that. We should be well past he's a black manager or he's this and that. It's just instead of just being a manager, and hopefully, we'll get some numbers up here quick because we're losing a lot of kids and losing a lot of athletes, and like I said, I just hope that, soon things, get equal on the playing field and off the field.
Yeah, we only have about 2 minutes left, Dusty, but I want to ask you about Darren because I've known him since he was practically born as well. Following in the footsteps of a great father and everything, how did you try to balance it out so he won't have to deal with expectations? Because I remember that Yogi Berra's son, Dale Berra, had to deal with a lot. Mickey Mantle's son had to deal with a lot. How have you helped him to better understand the environment that he's playing in today?
Well, Darren has seen a lot in this short period of time. He saw Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonds. He saw Ken Griffey Jr. He's around him. And he's seen quite a few players. David Bell, he didn't know David's father. But the thing is, I never tried to force him. I try to just present it to him. Like they say, you give a kid a ball and you can tell if he likes ball or not if he plays with that ball. Just make up games. And Darren's loved baseball. He loves all ball, but he really loves baseball. And he made up his mind a lot sooner than I did. And, I've always told him, I said, son, you're better than me at your age because you got a better understanding and you're not amazed or even enamored by being at the ballpark because that's like your second home. And so, he's very happy to, and I'm happy to be his father. I tried to put any pressure on him and, just let him be himself. Just let him be Darren. I know it's tough, and I told him sometimes it's going to be tough, being my son. But also, if you got the lead in life, especially in the baseball world, then keep the lead. Don't wait on other guys to catch up to you because you have a better understanding of the game than almost, than most kids your age.
I want to thank you, Dusty. You've been a dear friend for a long time. We've had so many wonderful conversations, and I'm happy for you. I'm happy for Melissa, and I'm happy for Darren as well. You are welcome here anytime, of course, as you know, on Sports Byline. Take care, Dusty.
All right, man. Take care. And Darren said he misses those games.
Take care, Dusty.
All right, man. Later.
Dusty Baker with us. We continue on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
We talk baseball with Dusty Baker this hour on Sports Byline, the Major League Baseball player for 9 seasons who won a World Series championship when he was playing for the Dodgers, went to the World Series 3 times, and, of course, outstanding manager and a 3-time National League Manager of the Year with the San Francisco Giants. And then Jeff Gordon was with us, 4-time NASCAR Sprint Cup champion who drove the number 24 Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports in 23 full-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series seasons. And, of course, he was a substitute driver for Dale Earnhardt when he had his concussion issues. And he also won the Daytona 500 on 3 times. And he has a book out that you should check out. It's called Jeff Gordon, His Dream, Drive, and Destiny. I'm Ron Barr. Good to have you with us on Sports Byline. I'm Ron Barr, and for more than 20 years, I've talked with the greatest names in sports. So join me weeknights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific to hear your favorites on Sports Byline USA.
Live, worldwide, Sports Byline USA. And here's host, Ron Barr.
And wherever you might be across the country and around the world, I'm Ron Barr. We've got you on America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline. Good to have you with us. We have a very interesting hour for you. I guess the best word to sum it up is it's going to be eclectic. So I'll tell you who the guests are in just a second. But again, I want to remind you about our award-winning Sports Byline USA website. We're always adding new elements to it. And a lot of bloggers are on our website now with their points of view. And so I hope you'll check that out. Don't forget about the fan poll question. If you ever want to listen to us online, not only Sports Byline, but any of the great shows on the Sports Byline network, you can do that by just going to sportsbyline.com and hit the Listen Live button. Going to be talking with Buzz Bissinger in just a second. Buzz, of course, best-selling author of 3 Nights in August, which was about Tony La Russa and the St. Louis Cardinals. Just a great baseball read for any baseball fan out there. And then, of course, the classic, which everybody knows about, Buzz Bissinger's Friday Night Lights. Well, his latest is the co-authored new book, Shooting Stars, with NBA superstar LeBron James. It's James's memoirs from his early days in Akron through his national championship, his senior year at St. Vincent's High School. And the book is the account of 5 very talented young men and friends of his who were all searching for something as children in Akron, Ohio. And the book gives readers insight into LeBron's youth, friendships, and elevation by the media. And Mike Krzyzewski said something about him one time, meaning LeBron. He said, in the Olympics, LeBron was a star, a leader, and the ultimate teammate. He helped our team become a family. Reading Shooting Stars taught me how he became that kind of teammate. What an amazing story. So that's a high compliment from Mike Krzyzewski. So we'll talk to Buzz Bissinger in just a second. And then right after that, Jim Fannin is going to join us. Now, his title is Life Coach. He has successfully coached some of the most notable athletes of our time. He teaches them techniques and methods that enable them to change their lives and play better. The idea is really to reduce negative thinking. And he played on the men's pro tennis tour over in Europe. He left the tour, began coaching the best of the best. And at one point, he trained 7 tennis players in the world's top 10. And he has worked in baseball with Alex Rodriguez, Carlos Delgado, Jim Thome, Randy Johnson, Derek Lowe, and Mike Cameron. So it's going to be a very interesting hour, and we're ready to crank it up with you on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Buzz Bissinger joins us on Sports Byline. You certainly know his work. He is the best-selling author of 3 Nights in August and, of course, the classic Friday Night Lights. And he has written an article for Vanity Fair on Tiger Woods. And let me just quote from it. When Tiger Woods finally fell from his pedestal, it was one of the greatest recorded drops in popularity of any non-political figure. When you take a look at this drop, have you ever seen anything like this, either in sports or in any other notoriety person involved in something like this?
No. I mean, O.J. Simpson comes to mind, but obviously, that's very different because he was accused of murder. The one that may come the closest, but still it's not as big as this, is Pete Rose, when Pete was accused of gambling, because Pete had such a place in the game and everyone knew about him, not just in Cincinnati. But I really have not seen anything like this, where in a period of weeks he went from being a true American hero to, in many ways, being a scoundrel.
What type of approach and attitude did you take to writing this article, Buzz, on him?
Well, to me, it's not an exhaustively reported story, really, because we just couldn't get access to any of the sources that would be special at this point. It's really an opinion essay. I wrote it because I've written a lot about sports. As you know, a lot of my books have been about sports, and I've hung around, pro basketball players and been in major league locker rooms. And actually, ironically, 2 of my best friends in Philadelphia are national golf writers, so we talked a lot about Tiger Woods, and it was really sort of my take on what happened and kind of this sort of dual life that he led. And, I think you mentioned this in your own commentaries. He really never did develop socially. As we look back on it now, when you're a child prodigy, when you're on Mike Douglas show at the age of 2, when you're 3 years old and you shoot a 46 on a municipal golf course, you're not going to be normal. I don't care how much you try. You're going to live in a bubble, and it was the same with Michael Jackson. So when you think about it, there were going to be things that Tiger did and things about Tiger that just were not going to add up to the type of perception that we had of him, and frankly, we wanted to have of him because there's so few sports heroes, left in this country.
One of your strongest comments in the piece is you say the tens of millions of us who admired him suddenly came to a realization this was the first time we had ever seen him do something human. And I thought that was an interesting comment. Can you explain a little bit further what you're talking about there, Buzz?
Well, I've watched him dozens of times the way millions of us have, playing golf. And, I've read various interviews with him, and it just struck me. I mean, he really was never human. He was charming. He was affable, but he never really said anything. He never got incensed at all, sort of like Phil Mickelson, would do at times. He always had the same effect. He always had the same smile. He always said the same things. As I said, I had a pretty good day today. And he really never, when you think about it, he really never did anything human. He was kind of the bionic man, as I describe it in the Vanity Fair piece, a charming non-person. He never showed any real emotion or any real, interior life, except for a few blips, when he would throw a club or drop an F-bomb, while he was playing. But other than that, he just was the same day in and day out and every time, that we saw him.
I don't think it's surprising, at least not to me, and I don't think you probably found it surprising to see that pendulum go from one side so far, meaning the perfect packaged person, to the other side where, as you point out, you say the Tiger's story has been driven by sex, tons of it, in allegedly all different varieties, threesomes, $60,000 pay for sex escort dates, a quickie against the side of a car in a church parking lot, a preference for porn stars and nightclub waitresses. I mean, that is pretty far the opposite direction of what we all imagined him to be.
Well, it was totally opposite. And I have to say, I was surprised. Maybe I was drinking the Kool-Aid or it just for so long, Tiger held himself in a certain manner, in a certain way. And plus, Ron, he's a superb athlete. I mean, whatever he's become today personally, he is amazing. And he had this steel focus and this relentlessness to him on the golf course. And I just said, well, here's the one. Here's the one guy who really does uphold the values that we hold sacred in sports, but sacred about humanity. A good man, a good father, a good husband, a great competitor, decent, kind. And boy, were we wrong. And I feel duped. I mean, I also feel betrayed, and I think a lot of people out there feel the same way.
Buzz Bissinger is with us. I hope you'll check out his article in Vanity Fair on Tiger Woods. You do pose an interesting question. You say, but why, when soccer player David Beckham was rumored to have been in sexual trouble? Then you talk about Alex Rodriguez. You mentioned Kobe Bryant, and even go into things like the president, Bill Clinton, and John Edwards. The thing that I thought about was I think one of the reasons why we're also a little bit surprised is we don't expect this out of golfers. Maybe basketball players, football players, other high-profile people, but not golfers. They seem to be more educated, more aware, more socially responsible. Is that part of the factor of this as well?
Oh, I think definitely. I think that is part of it. We don't really don't expect that out of golfers. We don't expect them, although they're amazing athletes. They're not they're not physical athletes. They're not like basketball players or football players. And a lot of them, have come out of Stanford or come out of UCLA or come out of the University of Texas, and they, when they're interviewed, there's an intellect and articulation to them. And Tiger just looked like the all-American boy. I mean, he had that great toothy smile and those great white teeth, and he was just a good-looking kid and then a good-looking man. And I just guess we all got blindsided, and as I said before, maybe we're all to blame. We're just always searching for heroes in this country, and we targeted him, and, maybe we put too much on his shoulders. But on the other hand, what does bother me, it was very clear now, he and his handlers, but Tiger is smart, and Tiger is very controlling. They crafted an image that was very designed and calculated to make hundreds of millions of dollars, which is exactly what they did.
I want to get into that in just a second, but the other thing that we both know is that there's a special comradeship. We always hear athletes talking about being on a team, and it's like a family, but there's a comradeship among athletes, particularly athletes in the same sport or on the same team. But yet you point out in your article that fellow golfers really didn't know him very well.
No, I mean, he had a few friends, some of whom are, now on the senior circuit, like, Mark O'Mara and Jim Furyk, but he didn't have a lot of friends. He was very, very aloof. I interviewed in the article Joe Logan, who covered golf for the Philadelphia Inquirer for about 20 years and was a national golf writer, and Michael Bamberger, a wonderful writer, a senior editor at Sports Illustrated. I mean, they saw Tiger play hundreds of times, and they both said the same thing. Very aloof, always friendly. But when a tournament was over, he would give the obligatory half-hour press conference in which he would say nothing, and then he vanished. He did not hang around with other golfers. He really had no friends, in the media. He stayed often not at the hotel, which was the headquarters for the tournament, but he stayed at a private home, and then, was whisked away in his private jet. And I think part of it was him, and part of it was other golfers were just intimidated by him because he was just so good. And it was never that he was unfriendly. It was just they had this feeling there was something about him that they felt was kind of unapproachable. He just didn't want to mix. But,
Buzz, because of that persona, it allowed him to be successful. And once he found a scheme for being successful, isn't that why he continued it on being that way, that kind of persona, aloofness and also killer instinct persona?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think they just began to accept, listen, that's the way Tiger is. I mean, everyone asks me now, who knew and who didn't know. I don't know. I mean, Mark Steinberger's agent at IMG was around him almost all the time. I mean, look, if he's a good agent, he should have known. And if he's a good agent, he should have said or, took him by the lapels and said, Tiger, this is going to be a disaster because you're going to get caught. And also you're dealing with women who have nothing to lose. And at a certain point, you're going to get bitten in the butt. But you're right. I mean, they just said this is the way Tiger is. He's aloof. He's kind of a private guy. And he's just a super competitor on the golf course and just not one of those people who, you want to have a beer with afterwards. And I don't think, many people sort of knew, what he was doing in his off hours.
We have about 45 seconds before we have to break, but Buzz, I agree with you about his agent. There was the primary responsibility because while Tiger couldn't see what he was doing with a clear head, certainly his agent could, and maybe Steve Williams to some degree, but I don't think he wanted to cross Tiger in any way.
No, I don't think Steve Williams would have that kind of power, and I think it would have put him in a very, very difficult situation, and it would have been really, really hard for him, and I think Tiger just would have gotten very, very angry. But, Steinberg has been with him for a long time. IMG, as you know, is a huge corporation. It's a great sports agency, and, if Steinberg didn't know, he wasn't doing his job because, someone should have said, Tiger, you're just going down a path, man, that's going to lead to disaster. This never works out. And I think at the end he got very sloppy. It's sort of the sex texts and the phone messages, and obviously, he was sort of hanging around clubs and, picking up women. There was even one woman who wrote something on Facebook. I mean, he wasn't wise about it, and frankly, at the end of the day, it's his responsibility. He is not a stupid guy. He's a smart guy. He went to Stanford. But, you have handlers, and one of the things handlers have to do is say, look, this is not going to work, and this is going to be a disaster, and this is going to blow up in your face.
Buzz Bissinger is with us. Again, I want to urge you to check out the article in Vanity Fair on Tiger Woods. We'll talk about the death of his father and whether this could have been prevented by his being around. We'll do that as we continue across the country and around the world. We've got you on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Buzz Bissinger has joined us on Sports Byline. You certainly know him. He is the best-selling author of 3 Nights in August and, of course, the classic Friday Night Lights. And we're talking about his latest article for Vanity Fair on Tiger Woods. Buzz, I alluded before the break to the fact that his dad passing away. I wonder, and some people have speculated this as well, if he had been around, whether this would have happened. Do you have any gut feeling or thoughts about that?
Well, I have a gut feeling that his father, of anyone in the world, could have sat Tiger down and said, Tiger, look, I'm a man, you're a man. I understand the impulse to have sex. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a natural impulse, but the way you're going about it is it's going to be a disaster. It's clear that he adored and loved and respected his father. And I think his father, as I say, could have said, and he would have listened. Because, at a certain point, as you know, Tiger became larger than life, and I'm not sure if he would have listened to anybody, whether it was Steinberg or anyone else. The one person I think he would have listened to, was his dad, because that was a real relationship, and they were, very, very close. And I think with the death of his father, that obviously was a blow to Tiger, and I think more and more he said, you know what, I'm going to call the shots. I know what I'm doing, and I don't need to listen to anyone. Because, Ron, I don't know how many athletes you've interviewed, probably 100 million at this point, and I don't think I know anyone who's interviewed more or interviewed them better. You know what they're like. They all, and I understand this, the great ones think they're invincible.
Right.
And the great ones think nothing can ever happen to me. And I understand that because that's what you need. And Tiger, felt, I'm invincible on the golf course. There's no one like me. He does have a big ego, underneath the affability. He must, and I think he felt, I'm invincible off the golf course. Whatever happens, if there's a problem, I'll take care of it. And it's really proven by how he reacted after the accident, which was one of the worst handlings of a situation that I've ever seen.
I think the other thing, too, is that when he got the itch, he went ahead and did it a couple of times. When he found out he could get away with it, he came away saying, hey, I can do anything I want. And that's why he continued. And you pointed out something that I think is very strong, Buzz, and that is the fact he got sloppy. And when people get sloppy, it's because they become arrogant about what they're doing.
Well, I think there's no question about that. And I think what's interesting, about the Vanity Fair piece are the pictures, which are wonderful, taken by Annie Leibovitz, who's really a great artist and great photographer. And they were taken in 2006, and they show, Tiger in a light that we had never seen him. Not just that he's shirtless, but he's muscled. He obviously loves himself. A very, very narcissistic portrait. And I think, as you said, he did it a few times. It worked. And then he said, hey, I'm going to be okay. I can get out of any situation. Nothing's going to happen. But, he's paying off women at one point, and, he gets in deeper and deeper. And, look, it's 101 that if you're having sex with 14 or 15 women while married, one of them is going to, at a certain point, say, do you love me? Do you not love me? And he says, well, I can't really do this anymore. And then she's going to say, hey, I got nothing out of this. I want some money. And it was just inevitable that this was going to blow up. And, I'm not a prude, but there is a morality to, doing this while you're married and while you have children. And what I think makes it even worse is he did invoke his family. He would do interviews and say, the most important things in life are being a good father and being a good husband. And obviously he didn't believe that at all. And, you can't help but wonder, why did he get married? If he doesn't get married, this goes away. Fine. He has every right to do what he wants. Maybe it's a little kinky, but so what? But why did he get married? Was it because he thought maybe he could stop these habits? Was it because of furthering this image of being kind of perfect and pristine? I mean, I really don't know at this point.
Well, one thing's for sure, he certainly doesn't know women in the sense that if number one found out about number two or number 13 or number 14, there was going to be hell to pay somewhere along the line.
Well, that's true. And, the explanation for the car accident and the hydrant and the golf club was frankly a farce. Let's be real. I know they deny it, but when your wife is running out of the house holding a golf club, it's not just to save you from your car. Let's face it. It's because she is really, really pissed off and wants to take that club and whack the bejesus out of you, which according to some she did. And you're exactly right. And it became almost comical. It was 1, it was 2, it was 3, it was 4, it was 5, 6, 7, and up to 14. And I do say in the article he was a sex addict, and I stick to that, and I believe it. And as I say, don't get married. Derek Jeter has not gotten married, and Derek has the right to do whatever he wants, and he's a great classic hero. I don't know why Tiger did get married. I don't know what he expected or what he thought, and I can tell you he never, ever would have gotten divorced, ever, because that would have hurt his image, and, his image was about making money, and he is the first billion-dollar athlete of our time.
Before I let you go, I want to touch on something else you write in the article. You say, sexcapades aside, the most damning blow to his reputation may well be his link to Anthony Galea. Explain that to everybody.
Well, Anthony Galea was arrested in Canada for trying to import illegal drugs, illegal prescriptions, basically. Galea has a certain past, and he has, admitted that he's tried HGH, human growth hormone, and on certain occasions has given it to people. It raises the question of why you would deal with a doctor like that in the first place, which Tiger did. There's no proof, and Galea is now under investigation by the FBI for supplying HGH to certain athletes. Tiger's name has not been linked, but why would you go to a doctor like that? And as you know, he went off the tour for a while, and he came back ripped and bigger than ever. And I'm sorry, every athlete now has to be under suspicion of using steroids. They have to, and I understand why. Because you know what? You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and people say, well, you don't have to be, puffed up on steroids in golf. Well, maybe you don't drive the ball 300 yards, but as you know, it's what steroids does. It helps you to regenerate very, very quickly. And if you're playing a tournament in 100-degree heat, as they sometimes do, and you're walking for 5 or 6 or 7 hours, steroids are going to help you. They're going to help you regenerate and recover and not get tired. And if it came out that he took them, I would absolutely not be surprised. It would not surprise me in the least. I don't want to suggest that he has, but it would not surprise me.
I want to ask you about one other thing before I kick you loose here, because you say going forward it's impossible to trust the motives of Woods on anything, but the stronger statement you make is his endorsement career is almost certainly over. Now, I wondered why you said that in light of the fact that David Beckham, after the rumors about him, has come back strongly in the endorsement area. Alex Rodriguez, I don't know about endorsements, but Kobe Bryant has overcome his problems as well. Is there not the possibility that Tiger Woods could come back and maybe not be as successful endorsement-wise, but certainly could get back in favor with people?
I mean, I think he'll get some endorsements. I just don't think he's going to get the level of endorsements that he did. And I think, Ron, he got those endorsements because he embodied to these big companies honesty, sincerity, and integrity. I mean, that's why they hired him. That's why Accenture wanted him, to put an honest face on their product. That's why AT&T hired him. That's why Tag Heuer hired him, the watch company. That's why Buick hired him at one point. Tiger was the epitome of honesty. He was the epitome of integrity. He may get some endorsements. Beckham got him. Beckham was always considered something of a rogue, and that's attractive to people. Kobe has not really come back to the degree that he once did. Nike may stay with him because, people are funny and people may buy golf equipment because it has Tiger's name on it. Frankly, I think they waste a lot of money with these sports endorsements. I mean, do you know anyone who's ever bought anything because an athlete endorsed it?
I have said that so many times, Buzz. No, I don't. We only have a minute left, but what is the lesson learned here? Do you think other athletes will take a look at this and say, hey, I'm not going that way?
Well, I think the lesson learned here is that you have to realize once and for all, and it's true of all of us, nothing you do in this day and age, nothing will ever go unnoticed. The media, it's not just that the media has changed, it's the Internet. Everyone has a camera. Everyone's looking for dirt. Everyone's looking for scandal. Everyone's looking to make money, and you better be sure that if you're going to go out there and you're going to try to present a certain image of being, in a sense, perfect and the perfect guy, you know what? You better be that perfect guy, because it always comes back now to haunt you and bite you in the butt.
Buzz, congratulations on the article. Thanks for joining us on Sports Byline, and I urge everybody to check it out. Thanks a lot, Buzz.
Hey, it was great, Ron. Thank you.
Buzz Bissinger, author of 3 Nights in August, Friday Night Lights, and now this article on Tiger Woods and Vanity Fair called Tiger in the Rough. We continue on Sports Byline.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
I'm sure many times you've read where this athlete has gotten himself involved with a life coach, and I've always wondered what a life coach is. Well, Jim Fannin is a life coach. He has successfully coached some of the most notable athletes of our time, and he teaches techniques and methods that enable them to change their lives and play better. The idea is to reduce negative thinking. He played on the men's pro tennis tour over in Europe, and he has coached some of the best tennis players in the world. And he also has worked in baseball with A-Rod, Carlos Delgado, Jim Thome, Randy Johnson, Derek Lowe, and Mike Cameron. In the NBA with Grant Hill and a number of successful golfers on the pro tour. Jim, good to have you with us on Sports Byline. Let's start off. What is a life coach?
Well, I'm not sure I'm a life coach. I mean, obviously, I do help an athlete in every life arena because, you know, what you do at work or what you do on the field, most of us will take that home with us. And, of course, if mama's not happy at home, that's not going to help you at work, and it's definitely not going to help you at the plate. So trying to get simplicity and balance in all of your life arenas, that's really one of the keys. And getting in the zone, which is my expertise, I've researched that for 35 years, and it's an ornery beast, the zone mindset. So it's very fragile. It's easily disturbed. So when your life's not balanced and simple, you can be out of the zone. Not a good place to be.
How difficult is it for athletes to departmentalize themselves between their professional career and what they do professionally and their personal lives?
Well, you know, for some it's been pretty easy. And in fact, they've, you know, put all their happy eggs in one basket. You know, everything that they do goes into baseball or goes into, you know, their sport. And, of course, that's a negative because eventually something else is going to suffer. They're not great dads, they're not great moms, or they're definitely not great with their significant other. So at some point that will come to a head. But there are a few that have compartmentalized those very well.
How difficult is it for one to do that if you're a highly skilled and a lot of pressure athlete?
I think it depends on your spouse. She or he has a lot to do with that. I think it also depends on how well you can concentrate, turn it on and turn it off, and maybe even more importantly, I mean, the spouse, obviously that's important, but how well do you handle adversity? And, you know, the champion handles adversity very well, and how well you can make adjustments. I think to go from good to great, you have to be great at making very subtle but very impactful adjustments. That's not easy for everyone.
You know, when I talk to people, and I think this applies across the board, and you'll agree with this, Jim, I've always said the one word that's so important is balance. Because when you're a professional athlete, let's take a baseball player, if you go 0 for 3, you don't want to go, you know, get too low for that. But if you go 3 for 3, you don't want to get too high. And really you have to have the balance of putting both into perspective. Am I correct about that?
No, I think you're correct. I'd take it another level, though. You know, the real goal in hitting a baseball, the primary goal is to hit the ball solid with an accelerated bat head. I mean, that's really the essence of that craft. And if you hit the ball solid 4 times and you're 0 for 4, you need to feel still good about it and not almost detach from the results. I think an athlete gets in trouble is when he's attached to the results and he keeps going back into the past and getting into the shoulda, coulda, woulda. So if you're constantly looking at your scorecard in golf, or you're looking at the leaderboard, or you're looking at your results at the plate, you're going to be in trouble. You'll miss the essence of your craft, and that's when the slumps appear. And I don't believe in slumps. I think they can be avoided.
Also, is the adage KISS, keep it simple, stupid, something that applies here?
Well, some of the best athletes I've ever coached probably had the double-digit IQ, so it really helps if you can dumb it down. And, you know, the average human being walking around has 2,000, sometimes even 3,000 thoughts in one day by the time you wake up and by the time you go to bed. When you're clicking on all cylinders, by the time you wake up and the time you go to bed, and you're locked in a zone state for that day, you'll only have 1,200 thoughts. And so, you know, that's a 30-40% reduction of thinking. You don't go into the past, and you don't go into the future. So you're totally locked into the present tense. And when you can stay in the present, another factor really comes into play which makes a player great, and that's your intuition. Intuition is real-time information that your conscious mind does not have. And some of the best performances is when they had a gut feel the guy's going to throw a slider. Some people listen to it, some don't. Or you got a gut feel it's a 6-iron, not a 7-iron. How many of us have hit the 7-iron, and after we hit it, went, God, man, I knew that was a 6. So if you can keep it simple, stay in the present, your intuition will be more prominent, and obviously then you just need to act on it.
I know people are all individuals, but are there any nuances, Jim, when it comes to dealing with baseball players as compared to golfers, compared to NBA players, to get them in the right frame of mind?
Well, unfortunately, for the first time in my 35 years, in the last several years, money, contracts, a lot of those things really come into play. Obviously, a golfer has no contract. I think that makes it a tough sport where, you can miss the cut. You can miss the cut every single week. Tennis players, same thing. You can be the best player in the world, but if you don't win that first-round match, you're going home. Baseball, some of the fat contracts, lions don't always hunt when their bellies are full. And I've seen that. I've seen a guy be awesome, get a great contract, and we've all seen that. The next year, the guy sucks, and that happens frequently. Or he's amazing in the end of his contract year. I think these things can be influential. The great ones, it's not influential. They just hit that high standard all the time. So that's the difference in all those sports I just mentioned, the guarantees and as opposed to no guarantee.
You said about the great athletes hitting that high potential all the time.
High standard.
High standard, yes. I mean, do they do that because of their focus, because of their commitment, because of their talent, combination of all of that?
I think it's all of that, but most of them have been doing that since high school, in grade school. A standard is a minimum requirement for a satisfactory performance according to you, not according to anybody else. You look at the Cal Ripken and say, man, that was a great career. But, I'm not sure you could auction off his swing to his contemporaries. I mean, I thought his swing was a little funky. A lot of guys may argue, and he didn't always have great, amazing performances of 4 home runs in one game. But this guy hit a high standard, maybe better than anybody. Oral Hershiser, that's a pitcher, obviously, that he hit a high standard. I coached Oral. He hit a high standard every game. I mean, he was just quality outings over and over again. So these guys have been doing that high standard since they were kids, and it's just carry over into pro sports. Hitting a high standard is the key because greatness, you can measure it by the differential between your best and worst performances. And there's a lot of guys out there in pro sports that have those swings from high to low, and I don't look at those as great players.
One of the things that I found in talking to the great athletes, and a Billie Jean King, a Reggie Jackson, a Michael Jordan, is a consistency in that all of them are not afraid to fail. And the other thing, Jim, in talking to Michael Jordan about this, he said to me, Ron, when the game is on the line, I want to be the one to determine the outcome. If I succeed, I'll take the glory. If I fail, I'll take the blame. And I don't think everybody is either capable of that or comfortable with that. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think that comment from Michael is just spot on, and how any young athlete needs to be. You want to be at the plate when the bases are loaded in the ninth. Billie Jean, she wants that forehand down the line winner when it's match point. Put me in that situation. And, as McEnroe told me, I coached 7 guys in the top 10 in the world in tennis, and Peter Fleming, one of them, I got a chance to know McEnroe well because they played doubles together. McEnroe said, excuses are for losers. How eloquent Mac is, and Junior's right. No excuses. Good fortune favors the bold, and when the money's on the table during a moment of truth, the great ones, that's when they execute just the basics, the minimum standard, and they usually pick up the money.
Jim, you know as well as I do, when you become an adult or even a teenager, you're coming into a maturity level in which it's all right to put pressure onto kids, but we're talking about that pressure trickling down even further now, especially in sports. How concerned are you about the expectations and the pressures being put on kids until they're capable to understanding what those pressures are and being able to reach that high level of performance that you were talking about?
That pressure has only accelerated in the last 30 years. I owned one of the largest indoor tennis academies in the country. We had 1,300 kids, and I'd have parents walk a 4-year-old kid in and say, so what do you think about a college scholarship? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Once you come back in 8 or 9 years, I think a lot of parents live vicariously through their kids. We coach a lot of kids, my company. We coach a lot of kids around the country, high school level and college level. And the biggest thing that I would give advice to parents, teach your kids how to make decisions. That means you need to let them fail. And most of parents that don't want their kids to fail, they're making the decision, pulling the strings. They're raising a kid that when he's finally on his own, he can't make a decision at all. And I think we need to have a country of decision makers. Your kids are only as good as what they think when you're not there. And that's my advice to parents. And I think right now they're too programmed. We let them do everything has to be structured. Go look in the playgrounds. How many pickup games? There's none. There's no pickup games. A lot of kids are specializing also at the age of 7, 8 years old, and they're doing one sport. Very little cross-training. I think that's a mistake. So, I agree with you 100%. There's way too much pressure, and eventually that pressure is going to burst. It'll find an outlet to burst, and it typically happens when the kid gets his driver's license and gets a little freedom, and all of a sudden they're at a war with one of their parents or both.
Yeah, we've only got 2 minutes left. I really get concerned about it because, one, I don't think that the adults are trained in a way to be able to do what you talked about because they didn't grow up with that kind of mindset. And, two, I think that we set up our kids to fail rather than to succeed, and that concerns me a great deal as well, Jim.
Well, I agree 100%. And again, raise a kid to make decisions. They're only as good as what they think when you're not there.
Also, when you think about somebody like a Todd Marinovich that came up, and that's an example, an extreme example about how his dad was highly skilled in coaching and everything, and you take a look at how he failed, why do you think that happens? Is that too much expression and too much expectation on him?
Well, eventually, it becomes a job. Capriati did the same thing in tennis, and a lot of pressure, and that didn't turn out well. And she was a great kid and a great talent, but I think you have to be a kid and you have to be able to express yourself. And I think there's people just put too much expectation. It's too stringent a schedule. Most of the kids don't have any time off. It's a 12-month thing as opposed to, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when you could have a season off. Now it's 12 months of training. I think it's too much, and again, develop the mind, let them make decisions, take some time off, and you'll have a better kid, and eventually, in the long term, you'll have a better athlete.
In about 30 seconds, what is the rule of thumb if you want to be successful both in life as well as in sports?
You need 5 things. You need self-discipline. You need concentration. You need optimism, unwavering. You need to learn how to relax, especially when the money's on the table. And last and not least, you got to love what you do and do what you love. You got to have passion every single day.
Jim, I want to thank you. If you find yourself in San Francisco, come in here and grab a seat with me on Sports Byline. I'd like to continue this conversation.
I'd love it. It's one of my favorite cities on the planet. It's the best. So I have everybody go to jimfannin.com. There's a test. It'll tell you if you think like a champion or not, even a parent's test. And it's free, and it's blunt as a hammer to the head, so it'll give you some feedback.
Jim Fannin with us. We'll take a break, continue across the country and around the world with you on America's Sports Talk Show.
This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
And that's going to wrap up this hour of Sports Byline. Buzz Bissinger was with us. Of course, you know him from 3 Nights in August and Friday Night Lights, but I hope you'll check out his new book that he co-authored with LeBron James called Shooting Stars. It's James's memoir from his early days in Akron, Ohio, through his national championship his senior year at St. Vincent's High School. And then Jim Fannin, he is a life coach. He has worked in baseball with Alex Rodriguez, Carlos Delgado, Jim Thome, and many others, showing them how to change their lives and to play better. And the idea, of course, is to reduce negative thinking. By the way, check out the award-winning Sports Byline USA website. You can find that at sportsbyline.com. I'm Ron Barr. Glad you could join us for America's Sports Talk Show.
Hi, this is Rick Tittle. Tune in every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Time for the Video Game Review. We'll review games. We'll give away a brand new game. We'll talk cheat codes, new releases, and your calls as well. That's right here every Sunday night on the Sports Byline USA Broadcast Network.